guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to OCO Social Impact Podcast, where we are equipping social impact leaders one day at a time. In today's video, we're going to be talking about different tips and strategies that nonprofit leaders can implement as they are trying to steer their organization through a downturn. That could be economic, that can be when it comes to your staff members, just a season where things are just kind of going haywire. COVID-19 really shifted the landscape of how all businesses and organizations are doing things as normal. We saw that there was the Great Resignation movement where a lot of employees were considering leaving, or they did leave because of the lack of pay, the lack of support, and different organizational culture things that were going on beginning in 2020 up until now. And since then, many studies have come out really focusing on the nonprofit workforce and areas of improvement where nonprofit leaders can continue to improvise and do some restructuring as necessary. As I was looking into some different studies, I thought it would be a good idea to talk about some tips and some things that nonprofit leaders, especially those that have smaller organizations, to think about as you guys are working to maximize as much impact as possible. And so according to the 2023 Nonprofit Workforce Survey, most organizations tend to struggle with two major areas. And I wonder if you guys can take a moment to think about what I'm about to say. So the two major areas was funding and employees. And there has been an uproar with employee burnout. That was actually the top area where organizations across the board in this survey reported that they have a lot of employee shortages, but there are actually an increase in the needs of the services and the products that these different nonprofit organizations are offering. And so this isn't anything that's necessarily new, but we are living in unique times where we must think about how we can change the status quo of what the social sector can and should look like. We are in a space where there is an economic downturn. In some ways, we have not really bounced back from COVID. We are currently in the year 2024, and so there is a lot of just different things going on with inflation and just a recession, in my opinion, that's going on in the United States in particular. So in turn, that affects how nonprofits are engaging with their donors, engaging with grant makers, engaging with local foundations, and also how they're engaging with their staff. And so I want to talk about some practical things with giving a context to what a lot of nonprofit leaders may be dealing with right now, to think about how you can activate and re-strategize yourself, your leadership team, as well as your employees and those that you're engaging with as far as the different stakeholders, to make sure that your organization is prepared as best as possible for an economic downturn. So the first point that you guys should think about is regularly assessing your organization's health. And when I talk about the organization's health, I'm talking about key areas: programming, operations, finances, the employees, your board of directors, stakeholders that you're engaging with, and so forth. There are so many nonprofit leaders that get caught up in the weeds of the day-to-day operations, which is totally understandable, but you want to make sure that you are taking the time to evaluate with your staff and other leaders throughout the organization to figure out what's working and what's not working for your organization. And the earlier that you can think about these things, the better you're able to create solutions to make sure that your organization is ahead of the game as much as possible. Now, I want to be clear that what works for one organization may not work for another. And so this isn't necessarily a recipe, if you will, to say all organizations should focus on these key areas, but I do think that at the principle, it's important to think about where your organization stands. You could look at this every year, you could look at this every 5 years, but if you have a smaller nonprofit where you are under constrained time and resources, which most nonprofits tend to be so, it's important to sit down with yourself, with the leadership team, and then bring in the staff members as necessary to really evaluate where the organization is and where the organization is headed. We have to get out of the mindset of this is how things have always been done. If COVID-19 and even the '08 recession wasn't a wake-up call for many of my social impact leaders, I hope that this podcast can really get you thinking about how to really think innovatively and in an entrepreneur mindset to make sure that your organization is ahead of the curve. We are in a very unique time, as I've already talked about earlier in this video, where you must figure out how to best maximize what you have and engaging with those individuals that can help you leverage what you don't have. And so making sure that you're regularly assessing your organization's health, even going back to the vision, the mission, the values, gives everyone a clear understanding of why we do what we do and what is necessary for us to keep doing the things that we're doing. The second point that I want to talk about is investing in professional development opportunities and general support for your employees. As the nonprofit workforce data showed us in 2023, many employees are leaving their jobs across all sectors, honestly, but specifically in the nonprofit sector in the context of this video, because they're tired. Imagine being underpaid, overworked. You're working with some of the most vulnerable populations in the world, and you coming in and day out. You would imagine as a nonprofit leader, you may want to step out of your role as well. And then when you add on the other environmental contexts, such as maybe having a family, being a caregiver, being a single parent, there are so many things that nonprofit leaders should consider as you are leading your organization. In one of my leadership videos, I talked about how as a leader, you are professionally responsible for your staff. And so, of course, there are many things that are out of your control, but there are things that are in your control. And making sure that you are developing a healthy organizational culture is super important so that your employees feel activated, motivated, and ready and willing to come into the office every day. And when it comes to those moments and seasons of economic downturns, you can reassure your staff as best as possible that tough decisions may be made, but we're doing it for the best interest of the organization. And some people may be thinking, well, we don't have the money to invest in professional development opportunities for our staff members, or we're a small team and we're just trying to make it work with what we have right now. Well, I want to implore you to think creatively about some ways to engage with your staff internally. I can understand that finances can be a hindrance, but there are free ways to figure out how to engage with your staff members, or even changing some policies that may be in your organization that's not really being beneficial to those that are working for the nonprofit. And this is where it's important to hear the voice of those that are working in your organization so that collectively you can understand where everyone is and make decisions as necessary. The third point that I want to talk about, or the third strategy, is collaboration. Collaboration is so important, and we are in a unique time where we cannot continue to do things individually. In my opinion, it is very alarming to see how many nonprofits are operating in this scarcity mindset where everyone's competing for dollars. Some of us are in the same rooms, the same pool of funding and different things like that. And of course, there is a level of competition when it comes to finding sources of funding. But at the end of the day, there are points of collaboration that you all should think about. What are areas of gap in your organization where maybe you could bring in a third party to help your organization out? What are other nonprofits doing that you can utilize their programs and services and vice versa so that you guys can come together on key issues within your community? And of course, be mindful that every collaboration isn't healthy, but there are many collaborations that can be healthy as long as they're founded on the right values, the right principles and boundaries for each party. You can really do some damage in a good way to serving those that your area of expertise is called to serve. And so think about, especially if you're a local nonprofit, what are other local organizations doing? They may not even be as similar to you, but for example, you could run a nonprofit that wants to focus on professional development for first generation students. Well, what are some organizations that are focusing on workforce development? Think about some of your local colleges and universities that may be able to come in and teach a seminar or a course or something like that for the students. There are so many ways to network and put yourself out there and just ask, and making sure that you're building those effective relationships and a network that'll be healthy for the target populations that your organization is serving. And the final point, which is no-brainer for a lot of us, is diversify your portfolio's revenue. According to the 2023 Nonprofit Workforce Development Study, organizational capacity and funding were the two areas of hindrance for most nonprofit organizations. This is nothing new. This has always been an issue in the social sector for many reasons. But again, I always want to encourage nonprofit leaders, especially if you're new and you're starting out your own nonprofit or you're working at a nonprofit, think about ways to get creative outside of the traditional fundraising models to engage different donors across different generations that can give to your nonprofit organization. There was another study that I found through Define Financial that gave 80 different statistics for social impact organizations or charitable organizations, as they titled it. One of the statistics in the study showed that 80% of funding for nonprofits come from individual donors. And so when you think of an individual donor is your everyday individual that's working and they're able to give as they would like to your organization. High net worth donors gave on average $29,000, and the average giving for an individual was $737. So imagine there is a great level of competition, because if 80% of your revenue is coming from individual donors and that's it, then you are competing and banking essentially on those individuals to be able to give to your organization consistently. And in some organizations that is 100% fine, but for most, I think that we should think about other ways to engage with levels of funding. Think about what grants are available at the federal, state, and local level. Think about ways to engage in fundraising activities. What are some corporate social responsibility opportunities that your organization can engage with local Fortune 500 companies or small businesses that may be around? I want you to really think about how to diversify this percentage so that if we are in a season of economic downturn, a recession, or something like COVID, a global pandemic, you're not closing your doors because you relied so long on 80% of your funding to come in through individual donors. In addition to thinking about ways to diversify your portfolio, please do not miss out on social media. The content creator market is growing at a rapid pace, and there are many influencers and partnerships and beta programs that you can consider engaging in to get your brand out there and collaborating with other influencers and nonprofits in that space. There's a lot of money that is left untouched when it comes to social media and engaging with the content creation space, because traditional nonprofit models have not allowed for this. But as we are continuing to go into a new age when it comes to how we work, how we do things, the rise of AI and machine learning, the rise of content creation and things like that, think innovatively how your organization can fit into what is happening in the world. So to wrap up this video, we talked about 4 key things. 1, regularly assessing your organization's health. 2, investing in professional development opportunities and general support structures for your employees. 3, engaging in collaborative projects and programs with other like-minded individuals and organizations. And then 4, making sure that you are diversifying your organization's revenue portfolio. And so this list isn't exhaustive, But based on the data that I've found and the data that is out there, we want to make sure that we are thinking forwardly. We are engaging in innovative methods and ways to bring in funding. And if you are a new nonprofit founder, this is where you have the most fun. It's okay to focus on the programs, focus on different metrics when it comes to program evaluation and operations and building a team and building a staff. But before you do any of those things, making sure that you understand the organization's health, the vision of the organization, and the mission and values can really help your organization be steered in the right direction. And I want to close out this video by saying there are some things that are just going to be unprecedented. No one was necessarily prepared for the COVID-19 pandemic. It was something that has literally shifted the landscape of this entire world. And so there will be some things that are out of your control that you will have to learn as you go. At the end of the day, making sure that your organization has a risk management plan, a risk mitigation plan is important and is key so that when things come up, your organization is prepared. So I hope and pray that this video was helpful for you guys. Please take a moment to engage with my content. I have my videos out on YouTube, but I also have everything linked on TikTok as well as Spotify podcast and Apple Podcasts. So if you're enjoying the content, if you like what you're hearing as I am figuring out best ways to engage with you guys, please like, please share, please subscribe, please follow whatever platform that you're engaging with OCO Social Impact Podcast. And I thank you very much for your support and your feedback. And until next time, try to make the world a better place today.